Hello everybody, I'm Rene Ramos, director of the Lynn and Louis Wolfson II Florida Moving Image Archives, and this is Rewind, the show that looks back on Florida's past with historic film and video. It's time for another trip back into the past, so sit back, relax, and enjoy another episode of Rewind.
This is Montage, with your host for tonight, Jim Brosmer.
Good evening, everybody. Tonight on Montage, Joe Abril meets the husband and wife team of authors who spent 2 years researching what they call the definitive book on the life of John Kennedy, and they reveal some fascinating facts about the late president to back up that claim. We'll also look at a new building, which is newsworthy even before it's fully constructed. But first, we're going to turn to a building which has been finished and occupied for 2 years, but which only now is coming into normal operation.
It was certainly in the news enough 2 years ago. The new Cedars of Lebanon Healthcare Center in downtown Miami, the largest private hospital in the Southeast. It had been a mammoth building project, culminating in a dedication by the President of the United States. But then, suddenly, even before it was finished, it all came crashing down. Just as President Nixon's administration had fallen because of mismanagement and impropriety, so fell Cedars of Lebanon's financial foundation, and into jail went its president, Sanford Bronstein, the man who had conceived and built the Cedars' $80 million complex. The scandal rocked the medical community here and left the hospital practically an empty shell, with monstrous debts, a bad public image, and very few patients.
Without that small hard core of loyal physicians, this place would have been closed. There's no question about it, because probably 25 doctors kept this hospital open during this crisis period. Now, of course, we have very many more who are actively admitting, but at that time it was very difficult, and you really had to sell the hospital to your patients, and you had then, of course, we doctors who were loyal had to sell it to other doctors who, as we've discussed, have backed off and were not admitting.
There wasn't much sympathy for Cedars in the community, though. Questionable political maneuverings had gotten federal assistance for the expansion in the first place, and local groups waited eagerly for Cedars to fold under the pressure. But Cedars did not fold. With that hard core of loyal doctors, an understanding court receiver, and an aggressive new administration at the helm, Cedars quietly went about stabilizing the ship. In January of this year, just 20 months after the crisis began, Cedars was returned from the edge of bankruptcy. That has been a notable achievement, a success few people expected. But now, Cedars' new administration must look to setting its new course for the future.
Cedars, as you well know, is a general community hospital. We specialize in medicine, surgery, obstetrics, and gynecology. We do intend, however, in the very near future, as a matter of fact, on July 1, to have a cardiac care program with the addition of two individuals, two physicians who are both extremely well known in their respective fields. We're certainly a leader in the field and treatment of cancer therapy, both chemotherapy and radiation therapy, and certainly in the area of gastroenterology. We're also looking, interestingly enough, at a complete diagnostic center at Cedars. We feel that we have the facilities, we know we have the professional staff, we certainly have the location in Dade County and in the city of Miami, and we are looking and attempting to develop programs that would envision patients from Latin America and South America who perhaps in their own particular countries don't have the kind of facilities and professional staff and services that we can offer.
But that brings us to the second controversy. Unlike the corruption of leadership that was settled by the courts, the original vehicle for that corruption, the facility itself, remains through it all controversial. Many say Cedars should never have been expanded at all, that there are already too many hospital beds in Dade County, 3,500 more than we need, according to a Ralph Nader report last year. We all support those empty beds through higher insurance premiums and Medicaid and Medicare costs. That same report says it is costing Dade Countyans $68 million a year for our hospital overbuilding. If Cedars opens all the beds for which it is licensed, it will have been expanded by 672 beds. The Cedars complex now comes in 3 parts. The new 500-bed hospital, which we are seeing and which is open now, the old building, which is to be renovated for 200 beds, and a separate North Tower building, which is licensed for an additional 224 beds. A Dade County Health Planning Agency, in a recent report, proposed a compromise use for the facility.
Well, the best thing for the community, of course, is not to punish the Cedars operation for the misdeeds of the past, and to close down the old facility and make sure that it's not used for inpatient care again, to make a contract with the Veterans Administration, either sell or rent that entire building, to move the obstetrical department from the old building to the new building so it's integrated into the new 500-bed facility, to terminate the licenses on the north building so that that building, which improperly was licensed as an inpatient facility, could not be used for that purpose, and also to arrange for the use of the diagnostic center. They have a computerized diagnostic center so that the community can get advantage of that, and it's to the benefit of Cedars and the community that that be fully utilized by our community.
There is no question that the new facilities open now at Cedars are fine, technically advanced equipment run by competent professional staff. The computerized diagnostic center is the first of its kind in the county. The medical equipment is the most advanced that money can buy. But that money amount runs to astronomical figures. And that points out the perplexing problem that in this country there is little incentive to hold down costs for medical care. Doctors order the services for their patients, but they don't pay the bills. The patients get the services, but they don't usually pay the bills. The insurance policyholders and taxpayers pay the bills, and they can't shop around for the best price. The cost of medical care in this country is becoming a staggering expense shared by everyone. And until there is a way to regulate, or at least effectively guide, the growth of the medical industry, the responsibility for protecting the people with the best, most efficient service can only fall to the people who provide that service.
The institution of Cedars of Lebanon has certainly had a rocky beginning, financially and politically. But the quality of health care there has never been in question, and that's a value to this community that the people at Cedars intend to carry on. Well, if you've driven through downtown Miami at any time during the last year and a half, you've probably noticed the construction work on Biscayne Boulevard between Northeast 15th and 17th Streets. That new building is starting to attract a lot more attention now because it's become one of the tallest structures on the Miami skyline. But Omni International Miami is noteworthy for several other reasons, as we found out during a recent visit. What, for instance, is this sloping line of reinforcing rods sticking right out of the side of a building? Well, that's not a mistake. The line marks the bottom of a swimming pool 4 stories off the ground. But the piece of building where the pool will be isn't there yet, even though the hotel tower already rises 18 stories. Omni, a 10.5-acre shopping, recreation, convention, and hotel center, is going together like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. The Jordan Marsh department store, which makes up the south end of the complex, has been there for many years. The new garage facing east toward the bay is recently opened. The new J.C. Penney department store on the north side is almost completed, and the hotel and shopping mall in between is rising like a concrete volcano out of the middle. Meanwhile, whole subsections of the huge building are being left undone for the moment. As project director Adrian Werner told us, it's a very unorthodox construction technique.
Ordinarily, one would think of building an entire floor level for its entire area, as opposed to the formula we're following, wherein we're building portions of the building full height, as opposed to building each level its entire breadth and width. So we're really going vertically instead of horizontally, which provides space for access and storage of materials in the areas where we're not building that particular floor area.
The reason for all this complex maneuvering is really quite simple. Jordan Marsh takes up the entire left side of the building, blocking off that side for construction machinery. The new garage had to be built first, since the rest of the complex occupies what used to be a parking lot for the store, and the garage blocked off another side. So, in order to have a place to park the heavy cranes and move in the building materials, the building is going up from the middle out, and the tallest parts requiring the biggest cranes are going up first. In fact, 2 of the cranes being used to build the 26-story hotel tower actually sit right on the roof of the building. They're anchored on steel foundations that fit like pegs into the tower and actually go down several stories from the top. And as the building rises, the cranes are jacked up higher to continue the building. Like any large project, the pace of construction at Omni may seem slow from the outside, but up on the 12th floor of the tower, that pace is feverish. The concrete crews are actually raising the building 1 floor every 4 days using another unusual technique. The forms, the molds into which the concrete is poured to construct the building structure, are prefabricated. After each floor is done, whole 10 by 30-foot sections of the form are rolled out of the side of the building, lifted up by crane to the next floor, and then reassembled. And then as the building rises, other crews begin building walls and finishing the lower floors. But Omni is ambitious not just as a construction project, but also as a business enterprise. In an age of flight from the inner cities, decaying downtown areas and bustling suburbs, it takes nerve to build a major shopping complex downtown. But Maurice Alpert, the president of International City Corporation, that's the Atlanta-based developer of Omni, expresses confidence in the future of the downtown area of Miami.
I think the citizens and business people have really decided they want to save the downtown. You do need a central core. You just can't spread out horizontally forever and expect to keep really a soul in the city. Most of your government, cultural institutions, and your financial institutions are all related to a downtown area. And unfortunately, these big regional shopping centers have taken the heart out of the city. They've taken the marketplace out. And this is an attempt to put a type of marketplace back in, and a type of 24-hour-a-day activity where you get people on the site 24 hours a day.
If all goes according to plan, it should be finished in less than a year. In that short time, the appearance of this construction site will change radically. The vacant area on Biscayne Boulevard between the 2 department stores will become an entrance lobby with a dramatic glass front sloping from the street up 6 stories to the base of the tower. And the parking garage, a much criticized latticework of concrete that shows a rather unappealing face to the bay, will actually look like a hanging garden, at least according to the developers. And in front, as Miami watches, this will become this.
Miami-Dade College has career paths in anything you want to be. What's your story? Be global. Be cutting edge. Be inventive. Be investigative. Be a hero. What do you want to be? Be the best. Be you. Be MDC.
Tonight we're going to spend a few fascinating minutes talking about that elusive goddess, truth. And when I read the book we're going to talk about, I was reminded of Voltaire's quote, which I'll paraphrase it, but it's to the effect that to the living one owes consideration, to the dead only the truth. The book is called The Search for JFK. It has been written by 2 eminently qualified authors who happen to live in Key Biscayne, and maybe some of your neighbors, Clay and Joan Blair. Welcome to Montage.
Great to be here.
What do you mean, The Search for JFK? What are you trying to do with this book?
Well, shall I answer?
Please.
Okay. During Watergate, when many new things became apparent to us on the Washington scene, the political scene, we wondered about Jack Kennedy and how had he been falsified to us? Was he a con job, or was Jack really Jack as he projected himself, or was there another Jack Kennedy? And we set out without any real bias in mind, or any bias, or any other objective in mind, really, than just to find out if this could be done at this early date, to find the real character of Jack Kennedy. Jack Kennedy's, the years that we deal with, from his age 18 to about 30, most of what we know, what had been given to us as fact of those years, was not true. It turned out to be not true. Either not true or distorted slightly or distorted largely.
Some examples.
Well, his war record, as a prime example. PT 109 and his service in the Pacific has been presented as a glorious, heroic chapter in the life of John Kennedy. It was not. In fact, it was exact opposite. The loss of his PT boat was considered a scandal. The events preceding the loss was considered inept by his own commanding officer, as we discovered in numerous interviews. The whole thing was a disaster. But his father, through shrewd public relations and his own innate sort of promotive skill, actually turned this thing around and made Jack a hero out of it.
Clay, now, was Joe Kennedy at that time, this is during the war, was he thinking of Jack Kennedy one day becoming president?
He very definitely was thinking of his older son, Joe Jr., as president. And Jack was to be not a politician, but a writer, a professor of history. However, just about the time that we're talking about here, Joe was killed in England in an airplane crash, and Jack then became the one to carry on this sort of fanatical desire of the father to have someone in the White House. So it became very necessary that this war record thing, which he had already started to turn around, be definitely turned around, and was done.
Was he really a bad man, a terrible person?
No, I don't think
Why
so.
did we need this great fiction surrounding him?
Well, yeah, go ahead, you answer.
I was just going to say, I think it's, they had to, I think his father and his press agents built him up to be a little larger than life size. They did have to cover up. They had to be careful that the public didn't know about his health, his bad health. But other than that, they had to build him up to make him larger than life size, just, you know, so he'd be more special than anybody else.
Jack's image, the image portrayed or projected to us, was one of a very vigorous, athletic young man who would love to pick up and play touch football, and was a big hero from the war in PT boats, and played football at Harvard. All of these things are true partially. In truth, Jack Kennedy's health was miserable. From the time he was born until the day he died, he lived in almost constant misery from a back. He was born with a back that was disabled, and throughout his life constantly went downhill. And he almost died from a couple of back operations. He had Addison's disease, which until 1949 in the development of cortisone would have been fatal. Jack Kennedy would have died by the age of, say, 32 or 33. The question of Jack's Addison's disease, which was under control with cortisone and really wasn't a thing that should deny him from the White House, was raised, and they lied about it because they were afraid it would kill him, that the Addison disease things had such a terrible connotation about it. They lied. They just lied.
Let's talk a minute now about the sexual side of Jack Kennedy, which, of course, is in the news these days. Did you discover any abnormal behavior of Jack Kennedy towards women, or is it what you would say is a normal male chasing attitude towards women with his behavior with females?
Why don't we give that to the
to the female?
The females, see how.
Well, I don't think it was necessarily abnormal. In fact, in these early years, quite a few of the women that we talked to who had gone out with him kept insisting he was very shy and seemed unsure of himself. And some of his very closest male friends or one of them in particular, talked about that Jack had a sense of trying to test himself. He was always trying to make sure to see whether he had it or not, whether he could come on and just, attract somebody, anybody. I mean, he felt that he had to, but it was more of a, seemed to me it was more of a unsure of himself. It was testing his power to attract people.
How do you both, excuse me, but how do you both feel about that as it relates to the presidency? Judith Exner now is talking about going to the White House and so forth. What's your personal feeling? Do you think that's bad?
I feel personally that yes, in Jack's case, it is important. Now, I don't think the Exner thing per se is important unless it is revealed that she was a go-between between, say, some mafioso elements and whatever. I'm sure that's not going to be the case, but I think we were told quite authoritatively that at one time Jack was carrying on 17 concurrent affairs while he was in the White House. This seems to me, if true, to be not only exhausting and time-consuming, but reckless.
That's right.
Of the office and so on, sort of an arrogance that I'd like to know more about.
I'm bothered as a journalist that the American people live on these false images. Now, maybe they should be. Maybe they don't need to know the truth. What do you? Obviously, you don't agree with that. Why?
Sometimes, Joe. Sometimes I think they get what they deserve. I don't mean to be patronizing, but at times I'm really appalled at what the American people accept as truth, or even this sort of drive, this need to have this heroic Placid, their saint, as a leader, with no questions asked, and attribute to him, things that are beyond.
I heard Merv Griffin say something very, very profound. He said, we expect our leaders to have done nothing, been nowhere, done anything. In other words, have done all the things that all of us do as a part of being human today. But we expect people that we want to be president have never done anything. And that's not normal.
No, it isn't
And we,
normal.
of course, know that no one lives that way. But why do we keep up this false image?
This I think is because of need to have someone larger than life to transpose your own problems and put them in in a symbolic sense, just dump them off on this guy and let him take care of them in that old heroic sense. I don't know, I think it also, the origin of all this is very certainly got to be in our schooling system. And I don't think that in the lower grades that history, particularly contemporary history, is taught with enough reality. It's time we all looked at our leaders, I think, with a new sense of reality, starting in the grade schools.
But absolutely, Clay, but what concerns me today is I want to know about Jimmy Carter today.
I do
before
too.
I vote for him for presidency, and Gerald Ford, and Ronald Reagan, and Jerry Brown, and whoever's running.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't matter who.
Right.
And I'm still not sure that I'm getting that, and as a journalist, I'm bothered by it, and all I can say is we're out of time, but I commend The Search of JFK to you as an exercise in the search for honesty. It's a fascinating book. It details conversations with people, and it details, I think, the search we all might embark on to ask people what the truth is, try and discern for ourselves, and I think no higher accolade can be given to authors than you'd search for the truth and reported what you found. and let the chips fall where they may.
Thank you.
Clay and Joan Blair, thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
We'll be right back.
Miami-Dade College has career paths in anything you want to be. What's your story? Be global. Be cutting edge. Be inventive. Be investigative. Be a hero. What do you want to be? Be the best. Be you. Be MDC.
Next week on Montage, we're going to look at one of Miami's newest and hottest industries, the music business. It may even be the beginning of a Miami sound. Also next week, even though football season isn't year-round, we'll talk with a man who wishes it were, because he never seems to lose, Oklahoma's coach, Barry Switzer. And that's our montage for tonight. I'm Jim Brosmer. Good evening.
That's about it for this edition of Rewind. Just time to remind you that Rewind features historical film and video from the Lynn and Louis Wolfson II Florida Moving Image Archives. To see more from the Wolfson Archives collections, visit our website, wolfsonarchives.org. You can search the archives catalog and watch video online. And be sure to connect to our YouTube channel, where you will find hundreds of carefully curated clips, or link to the Wolfson Archives Facebook page to keep up with our busy calendar of historical happenings. Until next time, I'm Rene Ramos. Thanks for watching.